Diversity of opinion about a work of art shows that the work is new, complex, and vital. When critics disagree, the artist is in accord with himself. This quotation from Oscar Wilde reflects his sentiments towards the public in response to his publication of The Picture of Dorian Gray.
Wilde received a great amount of backlash and criticism for his work, and today we will be putting him on trial to see just how responsible he was for the public disruption during the Victorian era. However, was the public outrage against him truly justified, or just the outcome of a misunderstood author?
The court is now in session.
The Picture of Dorian Gray is a gripping philosophical novel about the negative effects of the materialization of one's ego. The novel begins with Basil Hallward, a young painter and great friend of Dorian Gray, who had just illustrated a portrait of Dorian. Before meeting Dorian, however, Basil was approached by young Lord Henry Wotton, a selfish and vile lord who is obsessed with himself and the ideas of hedonism. Upon learning of Dorian's arrival, Lord Henry Wotton gets extremely intrigued, but instructed by Basil to not corrupt the ideas of the young man. Despite the warnings, Lord Henry Wotton goes on to deeply sway Dorian throughout the novel, creating events that highlight the power yet fragility of youth and the detrimental effects of influence. As said by Wilde on page 20, "There is no such thing as a good influence, Mr. Gray. All influence is immoral, because to influence a person is to give him one's own soul."
When Dorian sees the portrait, he is so stunned at the beauty of his own face, wishing that the portrait would age instead of him. Over the years, Dorian becomes more self-indulgent due to Lord Henry's influence, quickly moving on from Sybil Vane, a young talented actress who becomes distraught after Dorian leaves her to various other women during the course of the novel. Lord Henry gives Dorian a yellow book, a symbol throughout the novel of his persisting influence on Dorian's life. For years, Dorian could not free himself from the influence of this book, or perhaps it would be more accurate to say that he never sought to free himself from it.
Due to Lord Henry's vain and selfish ways seeping into Dorian's lifestyle, he is led down a path full of drug addiction, self-destruction, and eventually, murder, showing how even the most righteous of people can become immoral through the influences in their life. The danger of vanity and superficiality is a common theme in the novel. Dorian sells his soul to keep his face young and beautiful, destroying his humanity and innocence, showing how detrimental selfishness is to the soul. His painting serves as a reflection of his own inner desires. When Dorian realizes the immorality of his actions, his attempts at destroying the painting ultimately brings about his own demise.
When Basil comes to confront Dorian, he calls upon Isaiah 1:18, a biblical allusion discussing the washing away of sins and a chance to repent. Additionally, he tells Dorian, "I want you to lead such a life as will make the world respect you. I want you to have a clean name and a fair record, exhibiting his true care for his well-being." Basil and Lord Henry both serve as character roles of each other, each attempting to persuade Dorian down a path of either righteousness or immorality. The Picture of Dorian Gray challenged many social norms during the Victorian era. As Queen Victoria rose to power, she pushed for unprecedented social changes, forcing gender stereotypes and making the topic of sex a taboo, both concepts that Oscar Wilde would infringe upon during his lifetime. These ideals of Victorian moralism would become increasingly popular in Britain when highlighted at music halls through the many displays of singing, dancing, and acting.
We'll be right back after these messages. You need a break? Want to travel somewhere new? Tired of the old ex-wife calling your phone? Then contact Victorian Travel Company. We can take you anywhere. Petty France. Canada, eh? Your ex-wife's house to tell her to stop calling you. You can even go on our grand Dorian Gray package trip. This trip includes 19th century London, a filthy, stormy city with the influence of nobility decreasing as a new age arrives. You'll want to stay with a tour guide for this one. Watch out! Next up is on this fascinating trip is Basil's Paint Shop, a beautiful and inspiring building surrounded by flowers that motivates Basil Hallward to paint the famed portrait of Dorian Gray, along with the famed Selby Royale, the estate that Dorian inherited from his aunt, a grand structure that serves as a representation of wealth continuously in the novel. Finally, the ending of the trip will be a spectacular performance at a totally not shady theater at the edge of town, where we will watch the Shakespearean play Romeo and Juliet. Thank God it's not Hamlet again. You'll enjoy the best performances from the most talented actors. The actors are so good, in fact, we've heard rumors that the lead of Juliet even killed herself for the part. Talk about dedication. We hope to see you soon, and as we say here at Victorian Travel Company, discovering what you like never gets old. As this focus on morality became an integral part of British society, a literary movement known as aestheticism was founded. Aestheticism rejected the idea that literature and art fulfilled important utilitarian roles and contrasted Britain's materialism during the 19th century. It emphasized the central idea that art existed for the sake of its beauty alone. The aestheticism movement lasted from 1850 to 1899, promoting the belief true art should have no influence on politics, social conditions, or any other aspects of the real world.
Despite this movement, critics initially denounced the picture of Dorian Gray as immoral and scandalous, especially due to the homoerotic nature of the book. Publishment of the picture of Dorian Gray was difficult, as Wilde and his publishers had to censor and completely erase parts of the book just for it to be better received by the general public.
Adhering to the ideas of aestheticism, Wilde strongly supported the idea that art could not be moral or immoral. To write the picture of Dorian Gray, Wilde took heavy inspiration from English writers John Ruskin and Walter Pater, other prominent aestheticism authors. Wilde's flamboyance and wit allowed him to rise to popularity during this time.
Wilde's ornate and elegant style is exhibited when he describes the thought brought a gleam of pleasure into Dorian's brown agate eyes. It was through a certain word of his, musical words said with musical utterance, that his soul had turned to this girl and bowed in worship before her. Specifically, other prominent works such as Studies in the History of the Renaissance by Walter Pater and The Flowers of Evil by Charles Baudelaire discussed messages regarding the true meaning of art and explored concepts that were not socially acceptable in a similar way to the picture of Dorian Gray.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Have you or a loved one suffered from a minor form of identity theft from a literal painting of yourself? You could be entitled to a real cash reward, but 10 out of 10 people would say they haven't either.
Here are your donuts.
Hey, thanks. Have a good rest of your shift.
Thanks, you too.
You too?
Whoa, identity theft isn't cool.
Oh shit, my bad.
Brought to you by The painting of yourself isn't really yourself, but merely a reflection of your innermost thoughts and subconscious actions. Society of America.
After time, literary analysis began to see the book as morally unsettling. In contrast to the aestheticism movement, society during the Victorian era was demanding, pushing strict ideals and morals on the British public. With this came high expectations for the Victorian men and women. Though he wrote many widely acclaimed works such as A Woman of No Importance, De Profundis, The Importance of Being Earnest, and The Ballad of Reading Gaol, Wilde is ultimately put on trial for gross indecency after having an affair with a fellow aristocrat. After his 2 years imprisonment, he died in poverty from acute meningitis on November 30th, 1900, at the age of 46.
Oscar Wilde is not guilty of disrupting the public.
Although his work was extremely controversial for the time, his ideas matured over the years and presented the modern era with themes that are relevant to today's society, breaking the mold on taboos once held during a less progressive age. Oscar Wilde's work will forever remain timeless and hold a lesson for future generations to come. The People vs. Oscar Wilde court case is closed. I missed it!
Man, that show was crazy.